play around the basics of Angular, I created a new project by using this command ng-new. The name of our project is fundamentals. You already installed Angular CLI. You can use Angular CLI command, which is new, to generate a new project. For type stricting stricter, I entered the no. I don't need to do that. I also unchecked the routing part and I selected the CSS framework. So my application is generated successfully, and I navigated to my folder and I opened the code in the VS Code editor. I can run the application on localhost 4200. You will see this application is running. We can talk more about how to create components, how to add dependencies, stuff like that. So I'm using an tutorials point for Angular basics. They are using the Angular 7 version, but it is same. I'm using the current latest version. First of all, we're going to talk more about components. Components are the building blocks of Angular. Components are basically classes that interact with HTML file, which gets displayed on the browser. When you open the app.component HTML file, you will see the CSS files. You will see the CSS, and here is our template file. I'm gonna remove everything. Now I can say that I'm gonna write a simple div hello world. Now you can see the hello world. It will be displayed on the browser. About the components. In Angular, a component will have three parts: a selector. You can choose any selector, a template URL, HTML file, and CSS file. You can also do inline styling with CSS. This is the title. Here you will define the properties of component. I'm using this component inside the index.html. Here is our app. Let's say I would like to create the component to say that app should capcase, so I gotta do that. Let's say fundamentals. You can do anything here. I'm gonna fun app. It should be prefixed with app. App, the name of our fundamental, name of our application. Fun, app fun. So we have to replace it here, app fun. Still, you will get the hello world, but I'm gonna rename it to approot because it looks good. It's a good name, approot, which is our root component. Approot. When you open the app module, when you generate a new component with Angular CLI, it will add declaration automatically inside the app component. And this bootstrap, you will place your entry component into the bootstrap. So app component, first of all, it will load the app component. Now it's time to generate a new component. I'm gonna open another terminal, ng generate, G for generate component, new app, new component. You can use any name here. The name of our component. So you will see a new component folder inside the app folder. And remember that I told you, when you generate a new component with Angular CLI will add a new component into the declarations array. In this way, Angular can see that Angular can understand that we have a new component because it has registered to the declarations array. This is our root entry component. So inside the new component folder, you will see these files. This is our TypeScript files or test file, new component slash component.ts. It will also add a component keyword at the end of each component. Here is our new component works. This is the CSS file. So how can you use that component? When you will see the hello world. So I would like to use that component in our app component. You just need to call a selector here. So I'm gonna say that app new component. So when you open the new component, this is the selector. Where is this? This one is a selector. So we gotta use this selector here into the app component. I use the same selector. Our application is running. Now you can see that new component works. So this is how the components works. You can also add CSS styling. I'll teach you more about that. You can also add styling here. Let's say that inside the new component app, new component.html, let's say that style, or you can say that text align equal to center. Now you will see the text into the center. In this way you can add CSS. Let's learn more about. You can also add properties on the new component. Let's play around it. Title is equals to new. So you can use the property in the based on property binding. This is how you would do that. New component works. New component, we have the title property here. Why I cannot do that here? New component works. Title, but it did not display anything. New component title is let's wrap everything inside the div. Aha, here is an issue here. I added as a type. The type is string and the value should be new. All I need to pass the value. Now you can see that title is new. You can also add styling in the CSS file. So I'm gonna put the style new component.css here. Now you can see that it has added the styling on the new component. So that's all the basics of component. You can also add more components. You can divide your application into components. Let's say if we have a Facebook application, you can divide your application into the components. Let me add a to-do docs here. You can also think in the form of components. I'm going to say that docs.md. So let's say we have a Facebook app. You can divide application into components. Let's say first of all you can say the feed is our parent component, and inside the feed we can display post list of post. You can display friend list on the right side. You can display groups on the left side. You can display a lot of like pages on the left hand side. So these could be components. So inside the post list you can also further add a components. Let's say a post. You can also friend list. Inside the friend list you can also add a friend component, friend view components. Inside the groups you can add a group component, and the pages you can add the pages. So you can divide your application into components very easily. That's why they structure the application into form of components. In the previous video we have learned about components. Now we're gonna practice Angular modules. For me, the best way to learn code is to practice the concepts. Write the source code with your hand. Module in Angular refers to a place where you can group the components, directive, pipes, and services which are related to the application. We have talked about components. You can also divide your application into separate modules. Let's say in e-commerce application, I can divide my application into product module. Inside the product related component or directive we can place inside the product module. Let's say we can add product list component. Here we can product directive, something like that, product service. You can modulize your application into modules. For orders modules, let's say that you can place your component here. For orders modules, let's say that order component, or you can say that checkout component. You got the point. For you can users module for login, stuff like that. Auth service, like say that login component. In this way you can divide your application into modules. So we have a root module. You can open that. Let's say this is our root module. Inside the root module we are using the app component and the new app component. Yeah, it starts with @ng module and contains an object which has declaration, imports, providers, and bootstrap. App modules, like you can create the Angular module with the help of this decorator, ng module, which is the decorator. In the same case, component is also decorator. It's nothing more, it's a function. We are providing the options here to the function. So it's nothing more, it's a function. At the end, under the hood, they are calling the functions. It's an declaration. So let's talk about some declaration. It's an array of component created. If a new component gets created, it will be imported first, and then the reference will be included as a declaration. In the previous video you saw we created the new component and it has automatically added to the declarations array because it will store the reference. It's an array of modules required to be used in the application. Whenever you want to use a new module or existing Angular module, you have to import it here. Let's say I would like to use my custom module, or let's say I created the bootstrap CSS module, let's say that, or any type of module I would like to use, like API module, something like that. We have to register into the imports array. It can be used in the components declaration array. We are talking about let's say I want to use the forms module you have to add into the forms module. I'll talk more about when we're going to practice the forms module. So this is how the modules work. Now I'm going to talk more about data binding. We also used some type of data binding in the previous video. When you see the app.component, I use the title, and you can use the data binding in this way. Inside the app.component.html, you can add the title here. Let's say that I'm going to add the title fundamentals. You will see the get the title, which is dynamic value. So data binding is a very available right from the AngularJS, because here they are using the same syntax, and we use the curly braces for data binding. This one, we use this one, curly braces. This process is called interpolation. Got it. Let's play around some more values inside the app component. Let's say I'm going to follow the same pattern, or months. I'm going to create the array. Let's say January, February, March, April, stuff like that. I'm not going to add a full months. Now I would like to show that array into our template file, HTML file. So you can also use the ng for iteration. Let's do some magic here. Let's say that months here. I can also get the, but you will not get the months here because it's an array. So let's say I would like to get the length. You can get that. Cannot read property lengths of undefined. Months inside the app. Here is the problem. I have to initialize the value. In this way, this means it's a type. So if you would like to specify the type, you can do in this way. Now we have the length, which is 4. Let's remove the length. What will happen? You will see January, February, March, April, May. It has rendered the full array. So if I wanna iterate that, you can use the ng for directive. I'll talk more about the directives. This directive will be created, have already created inside the browser module. Inside the browser module, you will see ng for directive. I'm gonna ng for, but you will see the ng for directive. Let's try to access the properties. They are using the select. I'm also going to follow the same option. I'm going to open the app component.html. So we have the months array, select. I'm going to iterate on the based on option. Here I can use the ng for directive. Let is used to iteration. Define the constant, define the variable here. Let I of, or you can say that months of months. In this way you can use the iteration. And I used double curly braces. Now I got the value January, February, April, March. I'm gonna place that into separate line, or you can add a break here. Here we have January, February, March. So this is how you will do property binding or data binding. You can also do some conditional statements, I'm gonna open the app component here. Let's say I'm gonna add a boolean value is available. Let's say it should be true, or you can say that is available is false. I can say that please render this text only if is available true. I can use ng if directive, if is available is true. Here you can render any text here. You will not see the text, this our random text, any random text, because I set the value which is false. So I can use that here. I can set enable the value which is true. Now you can see the any random text. You can also use the if then else statement. For that you have to use this one, the ng template. But this is not common. Most of the time you use the ng if. You can say that is available, else condition 1. Condition is valid because it is available. If we set the is available to false, you will see this text condition is invalid. Let's say I'm going to set the value which is false. You will see condition is invalid. You can also do in this way. If is available, then condition 1, else condition 2. So get rid of this one. I'm not going to confuse you. If you want to use the if and else, you can follow the syntax. So that's all you need about the data binding. You can also add the object here. Let's say I'm gonna add the person object. Name is equals to Malik. You can also add the ID, which is 3, age 22. Here you can add your person object. Let's try to do what will happen. It's an object. If you would like to use the JSON, see the JSON, there is a JSON pipe. When we will talk about the pipes, I'll teach you. This is the pipe character in the Angular, and now you can see the object in the JSON format. Now I'm gonna talk about how event binding works. What is event binding and why do we need that? Let's say that I have a button, a counter, let's say that counter, or you can say that plus. How this button will works. So let's say I have a count value, counter, you can say the value which is counter at the 0. Let's say here I am going to render the value of the counter. When user will click on the button, it should increment the counter value. Or you can say that counter value. counter value which is 0. So Angular provides the click event change counter. You can also pass the event as a reference. So I don't have any method here right now. You can see that when I will check the console, you will see the error. Change counter is not a function, so let's define the method change counter, and it is going to return nothing. And let's say I can say that this dot counter plus plus. Now you can see the value of the count. I also passed the event as a reference. You can get the event, and I can log the event here. Let's say event here. Now you can see that which is the mouse event. It is going to give me the reference. You can also add an event here when user will click on this one. You can also do that by using the change month. Let's say I'm gonna do it here, change month. I would like to add the click event. Here is our method change month. Please provide the event as a reference. Now I would like to use this. Let's define the change month method here. It is going to take the event, return type is void, console.log event. It's not working yet. Change month is not firing up. Aha, I have to use the change event, not click event. I have to use that event here. Change event here. Change event. Here you can replace that to click counter. Click counter. Now you can see the change event here. You can also access the value dot target dot. These are all the options. You will get the select option. So this is how the event binding works. So we're gonna talk about directives. Directives in Angular is a JavaScript class which is declared as a add directive. We gotta use this decorator to declare the directive. We have three different types of directive in Angular: components directive, structural directives, and attribute directives. This form the main class, having the details of how the component should be processed, instantiated, and used at a runtime. We already used structural directive. It will manipulate the DOM elements such as ngIf and ngFor. Attribute directives deal with changing the look and the behavior of the DOM element. You can also create your own custom directive. I'll teach you how to create a new directive. I'm gonna move to my another terminal. Let's create a new directive. Ng generate directive. Name of the directive, let's say I'm gonna say change text. Now you will see the change text. Inside the app module, it has also added the entry for this directive, change text directive. Now I'm gonna open the change text directive. here you will see the change text directive in the app folder. The selector is which is app change text. You will see the decorator decorator for the directive. Now I would like to apply this directive to my app component. Let's say this is the attribute directive, so I'm gonna apply as a attribute. Let's do it here. Directive. I'm gonna apply to my span app change text. Let's see what will happen. You will see nothing here because we don't have anything inside the app change text. So I'm gonna add the element reference inside the directive. Element reference from the Angular core module. Let's try to log the element. Let's see what will happen because I applied the directive to span. I got the element reference, native element, which is span. So what you can do more, you can also set the value of element dot native element dot inner text. Let's say that this is my random text from change text directive. You can say anything here. Now you can see that this is the random text from change text directive. The main benefits of directive, you can use it to multiple times. Let's say that I can use it to multiple times. Let's say here I would like to use as a paragraph. Let's say that I can use the app change text. So let's do it here inside the span. What's wrong with that? I don't know. So you can use multiple times. This is the change directive. Can I do it with h1? Let's try to do that. Oh yeah, you can do it with h1. This is how the directives work. We're gonna talk more about some pipes. Pipes were earlier called filters in Angular 1 and called pipes in Angular 2 onwards. This is the pipe character, this one. It is used to transform the data. Let's say we have a lowercase pipe, you can implement it here. Let's say what I can do for the random text where I was using here. I can say that lowercase pipe. And you will see the title, which is fundamentals. And here if we have F is capital, U is also capital, but you will see in these small letters lowercase because we used lowercase to transform the data. It takes integer, string, array and date as an input separated. You can also add some uppercase. Let's say I would like to use an uppercase pipe. You can also create your own pipes. You can see the fundamentals. Lowercase, uppercase pipe, date pipe, currency pipe. These are all the built-in pipe. We also use the JSON pipe. This is the JSON pipe. Percentage pipe, percent pipe, decimal pipe, and slice pipe. Let's play around with some dates. Let's say date is equals to new date. Now it's time to use that. Here I'm going to create a separate section for the date. I would like to display the date, and we have a date pipe. Let's see what will happen. You can see the date here. You can also specify the specific format for the date. Let's say that I would like to specify the format day, month and year. Day, month and year. You can also specify the formats. You can also specify the percent pipe. Let's say that value is equals to 0.55% pipe. Here you can see the value, which is 56%. There is also a number pipe. You can do that in this way. Let's say a number pipe 454. At the end you will see the 3 digits 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. It looks good. So you can also add a date. Actually you can add the time here. Now where is the time? It should be date. Here we have, this is the time, 4:49 p.m. If you are more confusing, you can replace the date to today date, because that looks good. So otherwise it will be the same date and this date. So I'm gonna replace that date to here. Now it looks good. So this is how the pipes works. You can also create your own custom pipe. Let's say I'm gonna create a new pipe. Let's create a new pipe class for the square root app.sqrt.ts. It is going to be a class square pipe, whatever you can call sqrt pipe, and it is going to implement the pipe transform interface, and it is going to have that method. Make sure you import this method, transform method. You can also add the decorator, which is pipe. I imported from the Angular core. You can add the name, which is sqrt. This is how you will apply the pipe. So it is going to take the value and the numbers of array. I'm going to take the value, which is number. Let's return the value. Return math.square root, and I'm going to provide the value. The return type should be number. Now it looks good. So we would like to use this square root pipe. It has already imported into the, actually we need to import that because we did not use Angular CLI to generate a pipe. So we have to import that here, square root pipe. Now you are able to use that pipe in your component file. Let's say I'm gonna do it here. Pipes square of 2, let's say that 2. It is going to take this number as an input. Let's see what will happen. You can see that this is the value of the square root. Square root of 25, let's say that. Square root of 25 is this value, 25 dash sqrt. 25 is 5. So we successfully created our own custom pipe. Now I'm gonna talk about some routing. Routing basically means navigating between pages. These are all the routes. So you can create a separate page for the route. We will divide our application into components, so you can also render specific component for this specific route. So you already know how to create a new component. First of all, I need to have the routing module. You can also define routes in this app module, but I'm going to create a new separate module for the routing. Export class app routing module. I'm going to use ng module decorator. We need to import the router module because I would like to define some routes. Here we will place our routes. I can create the routes array. The type should be routes. This is how you will define the route. You have to specify the path. Whenever you navigate to application to the root path, you can render the home component, but we don't have the home component and the contact component. I'll show you how to do that. When you navigate to the contact URL, it is going to render the contact component. Let's create these two new components, ng generate component home. We're also going to generate another component which is contact and home component has created. Now it's time to import them into our app routing module. So we defined these two routes. So how can you create a new route? We have defined the routes. How can you use these routes? We also need to specify the router outlet here. I'm gonna render, let's say you can say that render the routes here. So I'm gonna use the router outlet, which is directive. We also we want to use that router module in the app module. That's why I have exported this router module. Make sure you are using the module here, app routing module, because app module is dependent on the routing module. Let's try to check it out, but you cannot see here, nothing here. Let's try to check it out. Invalid configuration of the route, cannot start with / you can say the empty. cannot start with slash. You can see the contact. Now it looks good. I'm gonna navigate to the contact component, but I cannot see the contact component here. In the app module, it has imported the home and the contact. So what I can say that routing section, it's working now. You can see the contact works. Whenever I go to the localhost 4200, home works. It means routing is working fine. But I would like to display the links here. I can display the links here. Let's say that I can define the links here. A is equals to H. I don't need to use the href this time. Let's say home or contact. Let's try to make it like a link. Now you can see the home and the contact. Let me add some space. Now you can see the home, but it is not working. So inside the router module, there is a directive, router link directive. It's attribute directive, so we can use that. Router link. Angular provides this directive, router link. Here I can say that to the slash root URL, router link, contact. Now you can see the contact here. Here we have the home works. This is how the routing works. So you can also define the same routes in the app module, but I followed this convention routing module, app routing module. Now it's time to learn about services. When do we need services? We might come across a situation where we need some code to be used everywhere on the page. Let's say if you would like to share a function to multiple components, you can do with the help of services. So you can generate a new service with the help of Angular CLI, ng generate service, or you can use the S. I'm gonna say the name of the service, which is JWT or JSON Web Token, whatever you wanna do. Let's say I would like to share some JWT methods into multiple components. Let's say I would like to share that JWT service code inside the contact. Let's open this service, and here you will see this service, JWT service, in the app folder. Injectable means you can inject that service into component. In the app module, now you can inject this service. Now it's time to define some methods. Let's say get token it is going to return the string. Let's say return local storage dot get item token. You can also define some more methods. Set token key, we gotta define the key. it should return the void local storage dot set item key and the token value. Here we have to define the value. You can also use destroy token method key and the value. I don't need to provide the value. It is going to return the void local storage dot remove item. Let's define the key. So now our use case is I would like to use that method into the home component and the contact component. So Angular provides a concept of dependency injection. So you can inject multiple services here. You have to inject that class into constructor. I can say JWT service and JWT service. Now let's say I would like to log that. Let's say I would like to create a new method. Let's say button set token. It's going to click that. It's going to call the set token method. Make sure you have that method set token. So I can call this method set token. Key should be token and value is I'm going to provide JWT string. Now you can also get the value get token. You can call that token value get token. I can use that method here get token. JWT service dot get token, or you can set the local variable token value is equals to string token value is equals to this one. Make sure you define the key. I can define the key here, which is token. It should be this dot token value. Now I can use curly braces for token value. Token value. Token value. You can see the token value which is empty. I have set the token. Now I got the token. This is how the services work. You can use the same service method inside the contact component if you want. This is how you will share the same logic with the help of services. I created a new service and I injected into the component as a dependency injection. This concept is called dependency injection. And I'm calling some services method with the help of button. Fetch data from the external API, Angular provides the HttpClient module. You can also use the HttpClient module. Let's say here we have the JSON APIs, JSON placeholder API for the users. Let's say this one. These are all the users. So I would like to get this user or send the API request. In Angular, Angular provides the HttpClient module, but you also need a service. So if you want to do some HTTP API calls, you will place inside the service. So I'm going to create a new service with the help of name user, ng generate service user, and you will see the user service. I'm going to define a couple of the methods. Let's say get users. It is going to return the array of the users. Or you can say get users. You can define the model, which is user. I can say that user.ts. I can say that interface user can have these properties: ID, name. In the language, let's do that. ID, the type is number. Name, the type is string. Username, the type is string. Email, the type is string. And address property, type is string. And let's define some type is string. String. We also need to do that here. This is how you will create a new model. Now what you can say that this is the type of our data. It is going to return the array of the users. It is going to return the observable. I'll talk more about the observable users array. That's all you need. Now I need to use the HttpClient module. To use the HttpClient module, we have to import into our app module HttpClient module. I have to import it. Where is my service? Yep, HttpClient. For Angular /common and HTTP package. We have HTTP client module. Now I can use the HTTP client service in the user service. Private HTTP client. This provides the API method to access it. This .httpClient.get method, I have to provide the API URL. So I'm gonna provide this one, API URL. You can also typecast this response into user array. So we created this method. Now it's time to use this method in the home component. I told you we need to inject the service. If you want to use that user service, we have to inject it. I can say the user service and the user service. Now I would like to use that here in the on ng init. Get users. We are using, it will return the array of the observables. So I'm going to subscribe to the method. I can say the data console.log the data. That's it. I can also set this is the user array and it's an empty by default. This dot users is equals to this one. Subscription is missing. Why it is doing that? Let's try to access it here. I think I forgot to import the user module in the user service. Yep, I forgot to import the interface user. Import, make sure I import it. I have to use the export. Now I can use that. Equals to empty array. Now this dot users is equals to this one. I don't need to do that. Get rid of this one. Let's see what will happen. Import user user.ts. Let's see the app module. I'm going to restart the application. So it looks good so far. I should see these users here. Boom. I got the array of the users. So my user service is working fine. I'm going to open the home component. What's wrong with this content? What's wrong with that? This dot users. I think it is going to give the array. Forget about it. I don't need to do that. So you got the point. This is how you will fetch the data from the API. It's time to learn more about the forms. Angular provides two types of the form: template driven form and the model directive form, which is reactive form. With template driven form, most of the work is done in template. With the model driven form, most of the work is done in component class. I provide this model driven form or the reactive form. If you have to provide the simple basic simple form. If you need basic simple form, then you can use template driven form. If you need to create a complex form like contact form, user login, you can use the reactive form. Let's try to work on the template driven form. We will create a simple login and the email password. First of all, we have to import this form module. App.module. I can say that, let me import the forms module. Forms module provides some directives components related to forms. So I can create a new form here. Forms. Let's create a new form. And I'm gonna use a template which is user login and ng form. User login is equals to ng form, which is a directive. Now ng submit, it's a handler. I will create that method on click submit handler. I'm gonna copy that code. So this is the name, which is email ID. This is the password, which is name password. Placeholder is password. This is a two-way data binding. This is ng model. This is how you will track the model space. I know I don't have this method. We will create that. In template, we need to create the model form controls by adding the ng model. This is the model form control directive. The name attribute. Yep. Make sure you have the name attribute. I specified the email ID. Whenever we want Angular to access our data forms and ng model, add ng model to that tag. Yes, that looks good. So we're gonna access it here on submit click. I did not define that method in the app component.ts file. On click submit, it is going to return the void. Now it looks good. So here we have the email ID, jane@gmail.com, and the password, and click the submit. Cannot read property value of undefined. Why? User login dot value. There is nothing here. Aha, it should be user login. L should be capital. So I created a new instance of the form. Here I can access the value. test@gmail.com, and let's say that password. Now I got the value, which is email ID. On click submit, access the data. You can also log the data. At gmail.com. When I will submit, I can access my data. You can see the data, which is email and the password. This is called the template driven form. Make sure you provide the name. You can access this is the name, email ID. Name should be this one, the password, this one, PWSWT. Now in the next video we will create the reactive forms. Let's learn the basics of template and reactive forms. This is template driven form. Now I'm going to create reactive forms or model driven forms. First of all, we have to import this reactive modules, reactive forms module. We will define most of the forms in component file. We need this one, form group. Let's say that I'm gonna say the form data. In the constructor, where is the constructor? I did not define the constructor. Okay, I'm gonna define the constructor. Here we need form group. I think form builder. You can also do without form builder or constructor. You can say that this dot form data is equals to new form group. Let's define the Angular controls. Email ID, new form control. You can also specify the default value. Let's say the test@gmail.com. I'm gonna create another field, form control. Forget about email ID. I'm gonna use the email password. So we created the form data. On submit, let's say I'm gonna create the on submit method. It is going to return nothing. It is going to provide the data as an input, and I'm gonna log the data. Now it's time to use this form data into our component file. I'm gonna create a new form. This time we have to use the property binding, form group, and we have a form data. This form data. On submit, no, it should be ng submit. Event binding, we can call the on submit. You can also provide the data form data dot value. Yes, we have the form data dot value. Now it's time to create the binding for the form. Type is equals to email, and I can say that form control name directive, which is the name of our form control. This one, you can see that I can say which is email. This time we have to, you can also say that placeholder, enter email. Form control name will create the bindings. That's for create the password, because we use this one password. Input type should be password. Enter password. Let's see what will happen. Cannot read property get of undefined. Form group expects a form group instance. Okay. Form data or form group. D should be capital. So now it looks good. This is our the reactive form. We can see our default value. We specified the default value here. I forgot to create the submit button. Type should be submit and value is submit. Or you can create the input button here. Now you can see that. test12@gmail.com. It should call this on submit method. I think it is not calling on submit. Form D should be capital. Why it is not displaying me the value? The value should be submit. I forgot to use this one, click binding. Now you can see the email and the password. Test12 and the password. So this is how the reactive forms work. You can also add some validation for the reactive forms. I'll talk more about the validations in the detail in our future videos. So that's all the basics of Angular. Now you got the basic overview of the Angular. Now you can play around some advanced concept of Angular.